All right, we are back. This is part two, frequently asked questions of an investment banker. I'm Arthur Petropoulos, managing partner here at Hillview Partners. We're a middle market, lower middle market, M&A, and capital advisory firm, helping companies, executives, owners generating $1 million to $10 million a year in pre-tax earnings or EBITDA, sell their companies, or secure capital. And so we always want to do a video where we had a mystery person off screen shouting out questions like you see in all of the cool Hormozy or Mike Tyson interviews. So that's what we're doing today. It's part two of our series in that. And so we'll get started with the questions yet again.
How are other necessary parties brought in, like the attorneys or the accountants?
Sure. So different sellers or people seeking capital have different types of relationships with their attorneys or accountants. Oftentimes those people have been somewhat of advisors to the business over time. And in those situations, they can sometimes be involved earlier. If you were to say by the books, when do attorneys and accountants actually need to be part of the process, then really when you're working towards offers, when you have letters of intent on the table, we do say if we negotiate the business terms of the letters of intent with the prospective counterparties and we get to something that feels good, we'll want a lawyer's blessing on it before we execute the LOI. Now getting into diligence, the buyer oftentimes will do what's called a quality of earnings, where they're making sure all the numbers tie out, and there'll oftentimes be questions asked, materials asked, and we will bring those to an accountant. And a lot of it can be handled by a bookkeeper, but if someone has a CPA on their team, we'll make sure that the CPA is involved, and if there's any kind of disagreements on some of the numbers, there may be some hours involved there too. And then moving further in the diligence process, as the buyer's nearing closing, they're putting forth a definitive documentation. That's truly kind of like the purchase agreement, any ancillary consulting agreements, disclosure schedules, things of that nature. And so that's where lawyers, again, become fairly involved towards running up towards the closing. So if you were to say, when do accountants and lawyers need to be involved with the process of either selling a business or securing capital, it's going to be at the point of the LOI. It's going to be the quality of earnings, where the accountant's going to be able to impart some value there, and then the attorneys get involved again on the definitive documentation.
How long does the process typically take?
It's a good question, and if you ask 10 people, you get 10 different answers. But our perspective at Hillview Partners is, and what I think we do it probably half the time as others without losing any quality, is we like a 6-month process start to finish for selling a company. And we have Gantt charts that kind of lay out every step of it. But what we find is that if it's a proactive process, you can really accelerate things. If you're not waiting for people, if you're not waiting to just say, oh, we hope they reach out, we hope they get back to us, we hope this happens. Deadlines and contingencies really accelerate processes. So oftentimes we'll see companies sell, it could be 18, 24 months. With us, it's a 6-month exercise, start to finish, and we like to stick to that on every deal.
How much of this do I need to do myself?
The simple answer is how much you need to do yourself, and the answer is none of it. It's not to say that you shouldn't prepare the company or have it in a sellable framework. Again, we talk about people, we talk about process, we talk about product, and a lot of that has to do with having things sellable or in a way that someone could acquire it. And so from a people perspective, are there any single points of failure? Are there any missing gaps? Does everyone have clearly defined roles? From a process perspective, is there a defined sales process? Is there a defined execution process? Are there operational components? Who hires? Who does the billing? Who does the invoicing? And from a product perspective, is it a defined product in the sense of, are there tiers to the service? How do you know which clients to put into what product, who to sell what to? And if you can define all of those things, then it's a very sellable business. So from a preparatory perspective, that's really where a seller of a company or someone seeking capital can add value. But beyond that, it should be a turnkey service. Right? We do provide, when we start engagements with our clients, maybe 10 or 12 questions that we walk through with them to gather some more materials and to be able to put our materials together. Once we have that critical mass of information, again, we're not asking people for bank reconciliations and tax returns from the get-go. The point of this is not an informational root canal. And when we get to a formal diligence with an acquirer, then some of that information must find its way into the data room. But at that early stage of the company, it's about getting enough information to get the business into the market, to have the right conversations with the right people, and that should be a turnkey service. And that's what we like to do, is end to end. Now that doesn't mean it's black box in the sense that we vanish and come back every month and say, hey, here's how it's going. We're updating our clients on a weekly basis. We're telling everyone what's going on. We need their input. Obviously, when it comes time for Zoom meetings, they are heavily involved, but we want to give visibility without giving work. The whole point of hiring an investment banking firm is to take the work away from you and to allow the person and the team that specializes in this all day to do exactly what they are the subject matter experts at, the same way you would with your business. And to do that, you shouldn't be doing the heavy lifting. The bankers should. So answer to that question is not much at all should be done by the client once the process starts prior to the process starting. Obviously, there's certain things that you can have for good housekeeping to make the business sellable or financeable in a good sense, but part of that comes in the characterization of the business. All right, next question.
Who shepherds the other parties?
That again should be the banker in the sense of diplomatically, but as there are attorneys and accountants that are brought into the situation, the banker really kind of quarterbacks the diligence process to say, okay, buyer wants this, we're going to provide this information. Accountant, we'd love your input on this. Attorneys, please review these documents. And again, these people can sometimes be advisors or close, friends of the sellers or the people looking for capital, and so sometimes they're more involved than others, and sometimes you work alongside them, but it's truly the banker's job to kind of shepherd that process, to say, okay, here's how we're going to walk up the mountain, these are the steps, hurdles, milestones, and to keep everything on track. So again, that should be the role of the banker in the formal diligence process.
How do I keep this private?
And again, the discretion of it is something that's very, very important. And so if we are, again, doing a proactive, not a reactive process, we're not sending this out to mailing lists and blasting the internet with it, well, that's certainly going to help. Also, the spoon feeding of information in the sense that we're not disclosing the company's name until someone is signing a non-disclosure agreement, until we know there's a bona fide interest, capability, and experience. And so we're having kind of initial dialogue with these parties as well. So we always say the probability of information leaking is usually directly correlated with the amount of people that know that information. Now, we put all the safeguards in place as well, but having 50 people who sign NDAs know the name of your company versus 1,000 people that ultimately get an email, that's a big difference, and that's going to have a large sway in things. And then while you're actually in the process, again, there's certain processes and steps along the process and that we guide our clients. You don't want to spring it on all your employees the day of the closing that, hey, someone else owns the company, good luck. And at the same time, you don't want to tell everybody 6 months before it happens, and then there's this kind of protracted terror and uncertainty within the business. You really want to be able to give everyone the information ahead of time, but when you have enough certainty that the deal is going to happen such that you're not walking it back. And that's a balance, and that's what we really guide our clients to say, okay, we're at the point where definitive documentation's been drafted, everyone's on the same page, we're just kind of crossing T's and dotting I's. We're probably maybe 45 days from closing, and that's the time to announce it. And we'll do it sometimes with our clients, sometimes we'll give them guidance as to how best to approach, but that's the way to keep discretion, is to be very quiet, buttoned up about the process, very kind of one-to-one instead of one-to-many in terms of the outreach and communication, and then when it actually comes time to announce it, to be doing it in a thoughtful, planned way, not just kind of blurting things out at the company Christmas party. And so that's a thought relative to discretion.
Why shouldn't I do it myself?
Well, the way we say that is people get offers for companies. A lot of times our engagements start because someone got a random few emails from people saying, I'd like to buy the business. Now, what they have a difficult time ascertaining is who are the prospects and who are the suspects? Are these people real? Do they have money? Do they not? And that's just one element or kind of the tip of the spear of it. But what we say to our clients is, no matter how much we know their business because of our involvement with them, we could never run their company. I mean, this is something that they are breathing, eating, sleeping all day, every day, for decades. And so our business is very much the same. The business of selling companies, the business of finding capital is in itself a business, an ecosystem. And so knowing how to position companies, what things to highlight, what things are more important today than they were yesterday, what things are less important, who to put it in front of, who's actually really itching to do certain deals in certain industries, who's not, how to run the process, what to negotiate in terms of terms, what's a market rate earnout, what's a market rate percentage on a seller note, what's a market rate valuation multiple for a particular business, a particular industry. You wouldn't know these things unless you were swimming in it all day. And so it's no detriment or it's no negative against a seller to say, how do you not know how to sell a company? Because it's the same as us saying, well, how do you not know how to run a software business, how to make a widget manufacturing company, how to distribute specialty clean room supplies, whatever it might be. If you're not in it all day, you're not going to know it. And so what we say to our clients is that their brilliance is what makes this thing valuable. What our subject matter expertise is what extracts the optimal terms. Again, kind of going across all variables. And so you think of selling a company, it's not just dollar amount. You got dollar, structure, transition, stakeholders, community. There's so many variables, and then all these different terms within each category that unless you're turning these rocks over every day, you're not going to know what you can push back and say, no, we're not going to do that. That's ridiculous. Or yes, that makes sense, but we'd like to up it just a little bit, or we'd like to shrink this, tweak this. I mean, this is the machine that we're working on all day. So put me in front of a Bugatti and I'm useless. Put put me in front of a company that's being sold, and we know how to tweak every gear possible to make this thing run as best as we can. So that's why, from our perspective, no one should, whether you hire us or not, sell their businesses themselves, or find capital for that matter.
How do I learn more?
Is this the last question?
It is.
All right, the Inquisition is nearing its end. So, if you want to learn more, and we're going to tie this back, and our wonderful video editor is going to put in a thumbnail here about our handbook, and it's going to be another shameless plug. But find content, find people that write things, find people that do things, find people that make videos about this. And so, for us, if you went to LinkedIn, you'd see on our company page or on my personal page all of our videos. If you went to YouTube and typed in Arthur Petropoulos, put a link there to that as well, you'd find our YouTube channel. If you went to our homepage, hillviewps.com/handbook, you'd find our Hillview Handbook, which covers 150 different items, topics, 150 and more that we put together if you want to read things. But find things, ingest things, start to live in that world, start to think about all the variables, and then get yourself kind of pre-acclimated or just familiar with some of the terms and how these things work. And then once you feel like you've had enough and you want to chat with someone, reach out, have a conversation, talk to people about ideas. It's just like anything else in business. You don't know if you don't ask, you won't learn. And the right counterparty should be willing to have the conversations with you to say, as we do with anyone who reaches out to us every week and says, hey, I might want to sell my company. Hey, I might want to find capital. And we don't hit people over the head with a hammer saying, like, do you want to do it now? Are you going to hire us now? And if you don't, then don't waste our time, right? We have chats. There's people we work with years after our first conversations, but we're always in the position to want to give people a little bit of information so that as they're preparing to do one of these things, they can keep moving the ship in the right direction. That's it. Those are our frequently asked questions. Thank you, mystery person, for screaming in all of the questions. And I hope everyone's week continues to go well. Keep pushing forward. God bless. We'll see you everyone next time.